Maryland is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding his 1 minute. I am about to lose my magic 1 minute. I lament that fact, but it is the fact. But I've not lost it yet. And I'm going to use that minute to speak for children who didn't break the law, who had no concept of violating laws. Their parents brought them here like millions of other children who now live in America and parents who live in America. They were Irish, they were Polish, they were German, they were Asians, they were South Americans, they were Africans. Parents brought them to this country, and they grew up in this country, and they thought to themselves, I'm proud to be an American. And I'm sure they sing with Lee Greenwood, I'm proud to stand up next to you. And they stand up next to us almost every day. We may not know who they are, but they go to school, they serve in our armed forces, they participate, they pay taxes. Now, some of them are far too young to do that. Some of them know no country except the United States of America, and they feel blessed. Mr. Speaker, I understand that immigration is an issue that divides many of us in this House. It's an issue that arouses passion than most others. But the test of governing responsibly is whether, even in the face of those divisions, we can come together to make progress on the basis of principle that ought to be universal. I said to my caucus tonight that I'd been chairman of the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe for 10 years and served on that commission for almost 20. That commission, as some of you know, is charged with overseeing the implementation of the Helsinki Final Act. The Helsinki Final Act, of course, signed by President Ford in the summer of 1975. What that act tried to accomplish was a universal understanding of human rights and how nations treated their own citizens, and how we would look to those nations and not say it's simply their business. Because if they abused their citizens, it was felt after World War II that they might soon abuse other citizens, not in their borders. And so we said we are our brother's keeper. We do need to make sure that people throughout this world are treated equally. And I've traveled to many countries behind the Iron Curtain over and over and over with my good friend Frank Wolf and others, Mr. Smith from New Jersey particularly. And we went to those countries and said, treat people fairly. And as I was thinking about this debate as it was impending, I thought to myself, what if some other country were taking children who had grown up, gone to school, were in the military, had gone to college, and were kicking them out of the country because their parents had come from another land. And yes, those parents broke the law. And this is not about excusing breaking the law. These children are not culpable. These young people came here because anywhere. Now, I'm in Maryland. Why am I a Maryland citizen? I'm a Maryland citizen because my stepfather was in the United States Air Force. And the United States Air Force transferred him to Andrews Air Force Base. And so we moved to Maryland, not because I chose to move to Maryland, but because my stepfather and mother moved to Maryland, and they brought me with them. That's who we're talking about. That's who we're talking about. One of those principles is, I believe, that individuals who came to this country as undocumented minors and have lived their lives in America should not suffer because of the actions over which they had no control that brought them to the United States. We all universally adopt that principle. No one holds children culpable for the wrongdoing of their parents, unless somehow those children are involved themselves in the perpetration of wrongdoing. So this principle is well known to all of us and ought to be followed. That is the idea behind this legislation. We talk about the American dream. We have a statute in the harbor in New York. She has a light that she lifts to all the world. And we say, send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest tossed to me. And America says to the world, I lift my lamp beside the golden door. We are the keepers of the golden door. When the ambassador from Ireland, and we have many Irish among us, came and spoke, one of the things he said is, deal with this issue. Deal with it because there are Irish among us who perhaps came because their parents saw opportunity at a time of great strife in their land and came to America. My father came at the age of 32 in 1934 from Denmark to seek opportunity in this country. There are so many of us among this group of 435 who could give similar stories. Our parents came here to seek opportunity. Some came, and our grandparents came when there was no significant control on their coming here. As immigration has grown, we've had to rightfully make restrictions. And I am one who believes that we need to know who comes into the United States of America. Our choice tonight is between allowing those young people to live their lives in the shadows of America or ensuring that those who want to serve our country and contribute to our economy can stay in the country that is their home. They perceive it to be their home. They were children in school, in our neighborhoods, in our boys and girls clubs, who played on our athletic fields and think of themselves as Americans. For those young people who have been in our country for 5 continuous years before the enactment of this bill, this is not an inducement to come here, not an inducement for somebody to bring their children here. This is to say to those children who are here, we are going to incorporate you if you play by the rules in an opportunity, this land that we call the land of opportunity. The DREAM Act provides for 6 years of conditional legal status, but only if they have completed high school or GED during those years. Applicants must finish 2 years of college or serve 2 years in the military and must not commit any crime. We're not going to allow wrongdoers. These are people who are playing by the rules. And if they meet those requirements, they will be able to earn permanent residence and be allowed to apply for citizenship. Now understand again, these are young people who broke no law. These are young people who had no intent to break the law. These are young people who have played by the rules, graduated from high school or gotten a GED, or about to do so in order to qualify. In a competitive world, America's openness to immigration is one, frankly, of its strengths, not its weaknesses. And the beneficiaries of the DREAM Act are the kind of new Americans we want. Young people who speak English, abide by the law, value education, and in many cases are willing to risk their lives for America as members of the armed forces. Our military understands the value of a new pool of motivated young men and women committed to serving their country. Clifford Stanley, the Defense Undersecretary in charge of men and women committed to serving their country. Clifford Stanley, the defense undersecretary in charge of personnel, said that failing to pass this legislation would be, in his words, unconscionable. Economists also understand the value of these immigrants. The UCLA study found that their income will reach as high as $3.6 trillion over the course of their lives. Now, they're very young now, so that may be 70 or 80 years. It's a long time. But it's an indication of their willingness, as have millions and millions of immigrants throughout our history, added to the value of America. A nation, we call ourselves, of immigrants like my father. That's why the DREAM Act is in keeping with the principles that have made America a strong and so dynamic. As Michael Gerson, now some of you may know Michael Gerson personally. He was George Bush's speechwriter. I hope you had the opportunity to read the column that appeared just 2 days ago. If you didn't, let me quote from it, and I quote, "It is a principle of democratic capitalism that ambitious human beings are not just mouths, but hands and brains. They are a resource, the main source of our future wealth." He urged his party, his Republican Party, to reach out in this instance, where we're not talking about forgiving wrongdoing, to young people who have not done anything wrong. Let us stress that over and over. I urge my colleagues to take advantage of that resource, to do what is both in America's interest and in keeping with America's fairness. Some of you know Jeb Bush. I don't know Jeb Bush personally, but Governor Bush, governor of Florida twice, and has mentioned as a possible presidential candidate. Jeb Bush said this: "I think politicians, those of us who serve in office, should be supporting the DREAM Act," said Governor Bush. "I think it's a good policy. I think the military is the most impressive and important institution in this country. And those who serve and those who are willing to serve should be given the opportunity." Again, not speaking of wrongdoers. Michael Gerson said at another point in that article, "It would be difficult," and I hope all my colleagues hear this, and all who are listening, Michael Gerson, George Bush's speechwriter, "it would be difficult to define a more sympathetic group of potential Americans. And the choice here is not between the presence of these young immigrants and their absence. No one is proposing the mass deportation of this particular group, children who have done nothing wrong, which would be the last on the target list of even the most enthusiastic immigration restrictionists." The words of Michael Gerson. The actual choice, he said, is between allowing these young men and women to develop their talents and serve in the military or not. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge my colleagues, let us join that lady in the harbor who lifts her lamp beside this golden door and understand why the millions and millions and millions and millions of people came from across this earth to seek opportunity in this great and generous land. Let us reflect that tonight. I yield back.